Hey guys, welcome to Let Hallie Read. Today we are wrapping up my April reading. It is a beautiful day outside, so I decided to just plop myself down here and do this video outside because it's just so nice and just perfect weather. And in Oklahoma, you have to take advantage of the perfect weather or else it will just go by really quickly. For all we know, tomorrow it could start snowing. You never know here. So with filming outside, there are probably going to be noises, lighting issues, maybe some dogs barking, I don't know. So I do apologize, but I just could not pass up the opportunity to film outside in this wonderful weather. All right, so let's get started on this reading wrap up. I read 11 books in all, and that is insane for me. I never ever read that much in a month. I am happy if I can make it to 4 books, but this has just been a really great reading month, and it's probably going to stay that way because the summer is coming. I'm not going to be working, and so I'm probably going to get a lot of reading done over the summer. So I just normally do these by just going in the order of what I read. Last month I mentioned that my dad and I were reading the Lord of the Rings series. We did end up finishing the Lord of the Rings series. So I listened to The Two Towers and Return of the King. The Return of the King took me a little bit longer. I just wasn't getting into it as much. Now, like I said, I did listen to the audiobooks, but I think maybe in the future I'll want to pick up the physical books to see how it differs, because I did at times have a hard time following the story, and maybe it's just because I was listening to it and not reading it. The second book I read for April was one of my Book of the Month Club books, and that is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This book is set both in the present and past, so we're getting perspectives from 3 different women. 2 of them are in the past and 1 of them is in the present. The 2 women in the past are in 18th century London, and one of them, Nella, runs a secret apothecary where she gives medicines to women. So her apothecary caters to women. Women can come in and basically get poisons from Nella to poison the men in their lives who are mistreating them. And then Caroline, who is in the present, finds like one of Nella's bottles, and starts investigating this woman from 200 years in the past. I saw this book described as a quiet book, and I think that's the perfect description. I did like it, but it was quiet. There wasn't anything super crazy that happened. I mean, we did get some climactic stuff in there, but nothing like, I don't know, nothing that took me off guard, nothing that just made me want to keep turning the pages. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I don't think that every single book has to be just this crazy page turner. I think it's very character driven, much more than plot driven. There is a plot in there and it doesn't go away from you. I just think that we are getting to know these characters so in-depthly as the plot is going along. So very character driven in my opinion. It's pretty fast pacing. I thought the back and forth from the future to the present was done really well. It didn't confuse me. It didn't like leave me wondering what was going on. Overall, it was a really good book. So the third book I read was Fablehaven by Brandon Mule. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. It's a middle grade fantasy. I will talk more about it in my middle grade recommendation video. I made a lot of notes about it, but overall it's just about these 2 siblings. I think the girl is like 14 going on 15 and the little boy is like maybe 11 going on 12, around that age, and they have to go visit their grandparents who they're not super close to, but then they find out that their grandfather is the warden or the caretaker of this magical land called Fablehaven, and there's a lot of different magical creatures including fairies and nymphs and the people with the hooves, fawns. I could not think of the word. I literally had to look up Mr. Tumnus from Narnia to find out what the name of that creature was. All these magical creatures, and the brother, being just a normal 12-year-old boy, does a lot of really stupid things. But I felt like the characters were very sweet and likable, and even though I wanted to wring that kid's neck sometimes, I love the main girl. Their names are going out of my head right now. I honestly wish I would have known about this book when I was younger. I can't remember when it came out, but I think it came out when I was just a little bit older, and so I kind of passed the age to read it, maybe, possibly, I can't remember. But yeah, I think I would have really loved this one if I were like 13, 14 years old. The next book I have on my list is Lost Illumination by Casey Dunford. This was an ebook, so I don't have it with me, but I also read the sequel to Lost Illumination, which is Dormant Souls, also by Casey Dunford. Casey Dunford is a Bookstagrammer author that I met via my Bookstagram. Honestly, just one of the sweetest people I've met on Bookstagram. And when I found out that she wrote a book, I definitely wanted to check it out. And you know, there is that little nervousness of like, oh, I hope that I like this book because I know the author. That book series, the first and second, I think she's working on the third one now, blew me away. It was so much better than I ever expected it to be. I didn't really expect anything bad from it, but it blew me away. Her writing style, her imagery. It's very difficult for me to like always picture characters or creatures in a book, and I could picture the characters and the creatures in this book. And so I absolutely love that. That one is also going to be on my middle grade recommendation video. It's more of a transition from middle grade to YA fantasy. I wouldn't really label it strict middle grade, but the first book does start out with our young character Christian. He is, I think, 13 at the time, 13, 14. So he's pulled into this world called the Mirror-Atlantic. There's creatures and monsters and ghosts and like a whole kingdom that needs to be saved. And he is just a somewhat little nobody who just gets pulled through. He's got his own really, really interesting backstory that comes in throughout. And yeah, like I said, I will talk more about that book when we get to our middle grade recommendation. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. I think it's a really great book. It is a chosen one type book, very plot driven. It's very character driven. And man, I can't really even say anything about the second book because that's really going to give a lot away, but definitely check it out. I'll put the information for that book below. And yeah, it was really, really great. Next book that I read in April was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is a old Hollywood, golden age of Hollywood type setting. We're following Evelyn Hugo's life as she is being interviewed for her biography. And there's like a lot of things that lead up to that biography that I won't give away because the journalist is a big part of the biography. And it's just like the title says, we go through Evelyn's life where she is just a nobody and then she kind of rises up in Hollywood and where she starts, you know, getting married for all these different reasons. You're learning a lot about her and her life and her friendships. And there is a very good twist at the end. I did not see it coming. So the book is another one similar to the Lost Apothecary where we are kind of going back and forth in time. So obviously when Evelyn is talking about her life, we are kind of swept back in time, but then when the journalist speaks, we are back in the present. And there were some moments where I felt like, you know, why do we keep coming back to the present? Why do we care about this journalist? Like, I'm not invested in her. I want to keep going with Evelyn and what she went through and her story. But it all makes sense by the end. It all makes sense. If you are reading this and you're just kind of like, oh, why do we keep coming back to the journalist? Keep going. It's worth it. It means something. The next book that I read was V.E. Schwab's, or actually she's under Victoria Schwab in this, The City of Ghosts. This was gifted to me in a secret sister Bookstagram exchange, and I ended up buddy reading it with that Bookstagrammer. And this is a middle grade. This is by Victoria Schwab, the same V.E. Schwab, and it is middle grade. It is haunted. It's ghost-like. Follows Cassidy, whatever her name is. And she has a near-death experience and she can now see ghosts. And one of her best friends, actually her main best friend, is a ghost named Jacob. Her parents are like all into the supernatural. They've got this new TV show that they've been given where they just go around in haunted places and talk about ghosts and all these things. So they end up going to Scotland and she sees ghosts there. There is a very evil ghost that she has to defeat, and she meets other people along the way that are like her. It's a whole thing. Yeah, it's very plot driven to me. Very plot driven, but also very character driven. Mostly in the character of Jacob. Jacob is the best friend ghost, and he is the one I want to know more about. I ended up even buying the second book because I just want to know more about Jacob. Like, that is my main dude. All I want is Jacob. Because I'm just so interested in his character. All of that being said, I don't know if this was the best introduction to V.E. Schwab that I could have. So I'm still going to give her a chance. I do plan on reading Addie LaRue, and I do plan on reading her other trilogy. I just put it on my Goodreads and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I do plan on giving her another chance. Not that this was bad, it was just very young. The next book that I read was my second book of the month club choice, and it was People We Meet on Vacation. So when I was trying to decide what I wanted to get for my book of the month for April, I got on my Instagram, and this is the book that everyone voted for. This is a contemporary romance, which is not usually the genre that I gravitate to. So I do have some criticisms of the book, but please know that I don't know enough about this genre. It might just be a staple of the genre. So we have two best friends who every year they've gone on vacation together to different places since they were in college. And I think like by the end of the book, they're like 30 or something. They have a big falling out and they don't talk to each other for like 2 years. And then the girl Poppy, she decides like she's not happy with her life. She wants to reconnect with her friend Alex, that's the best friend, and asks him to go on vacation with her. And that's kind of what that is. So it's not a spoiler to say that it's going to be like a friends to lovers story, because literally the blurb says 2 best friends, 10 summer trips, 1 last chance to fall in love. So we know what's going to happen. I feel like contemporary fiction, contemporary romance isn't always like super unpredictable. We can usually predict what's going to happen. And the whole time I knew it was going to happen. There were a couple of twists, but nothing that shocked me in this book, and that's okay. Like I said before, not every book has to just shock you. It's very character driven. It's very much about the romance and their relationship and their friendship. It was super fast to get through, and overall I enjoyed it. I think it was a solid book. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I enjoyed it. I liked it. It's also all in Poppy's perspective, so we don't really get Alex's perspective at all, and I really feel like this book could have been a lot punchier if we would have gotten Alex's perspective. I liked Poppy, but sometimes when you spend that much time with one character, especially when there's another character who has their own side of the story, the main character that you're getting the point of view from starts to become a little annoying. Now, I didn't find Poppy super annoying. I just felt like she was unbalanced. I really feel like we needed Alex's point of view to really balance this story out. And again, I have heard that like usually contemporary romance is for the most part from the woman's perspective. And I don't know, I love Alex. He is like this cute little cinnamon roll of a man. We love him. And I just wanted to know how he felt the whole time. I just wanted to see. So that is People We Meet on Vacation. If you love contemporary romance, I do recommend it. It was really good. So I have also heard that Emily Henry's Beach Read is even better than this one. Sarah from Sarah Lorraine Reads is going to read that book, and I might wait until she reads it to see what she thinks. Next book I finished was Daisy Jones and the Six. I listened to the audiobook of this one because Sarah, again, was the person that told me that the audiobook is really good. I'm very picky when it comes to audiobooks. I like a good narrator. And so she recommended that one to me, and I did. I liked the narration. What you're getting with Daisy Jones and the Six is you are following this band from where they started to where they ended. And you get a lot of Daisy Jones, but you also get a lot of Billy Dunn, who is like the lead singer of the band The Six. And then you're getting all the other band members' perspectives as well. So, you know, this was 70s rock and roll, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll. You're getting a ton of that. I'm sorry I didn't mention it. This book is also by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who wrote The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Reading this after that one, I felt like it was flat compared to Evelyn Hugo. I thought Evelyn Hugo's twist at the end was much more interesting than Daisy Jones and the Six's twist, because there is a little bit of a twist, but it's not, I don't know, it just wasn't super mind-blowing. I liked it. It's very character driven because you're following the members of this band and how they kind of survived their stardom and how they like came up in this business, and that was really interesting. I liked Daisy Jones well enough. I didn't think she was a super annoying character. I liked all the characters. I just didn't think it wowed me as much as Evelyn Hugo did. But I do recommend it, and if you are having, I know a couple people who have read the book that they just are struggling getting through it. They think about DNFing it. I think listening to the audiobook was really beneficial for me. Final book that I read in April was Redwall by Brian Jakes. I actually am technically not finished with this book yet. I'm going to finish it this weekend, but it was a April read, so it's going to be on my list. You may have noticed this book in one of my DNF videos that I made. This was a DNF that I did plan on coming back to, and I did. I came back to it, and I loved it the second time around. I am so glad I gave it another chance. This is a classic story. This book will also be on my middle grade recommendation video, so I'll have to go more into it at that point. But this is a book that a lot of people know about. I was never familiar with it. I did not grow up reading it. My husband did. This is actually his copy. It's about a little mouse, Matthias, who is very brave. Clooney the Scourge comes, which is this huge gross rat. He's evil, and he comes and he wants to come to Matthias's abbey and take over. And the abbey is, you know, a fortress basically, and they really fight them off. And Matthias has to go find like the sword of Martin the Warrior, which is like another old mouse that had passed away, and he was like this warrior. He has to go find his sword so that he can beat Clooney the Scourge. But it's not just about him. I really love the other characters in this book. Everyone in the abbey is just so wonderful and so brave, and you definitely see that divide between good and evil, and you definitely see the difference between what kindness does and what anger and abuse does. And it really goes into that, and I can't wait to talk more about this in my middle grade recommendation video. It was such a beautiful story. I say was, again, I'm just a few chapters away from finishing it, so I'm really excited. And yeah, it was well worth the read. Okay, so those are all the books that I read for April. I'm gonna start something new and start telling you guys my favorite books of the month and my least favorite. So my favorite book of this month was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo. Love this book. Very compelling. Love diving into old Hollywood, the golden age of Hollywood. So this was my favorite book of the month. Now my least favorite book of the month, it's a tie between People We Meet on Vacation and City of Ghosts. And I hate to say that because it's not like I didn't like these books. There was no book this month that I absolutely hated. I'm just thinking of like if I had to pick a least favorite. It might actually be City of Ghosts, which is crazy because I do plan on continuing the series just because of Jacob. I freaking love that kid. And so this was probably my least favorite only because of the tone. And again, it's not the tone's fault. It was just, it's middle grade. And but I read other middle grade books that I could get through, and the tone didn't bother me as much. This one still bothered me a little bit, but that's okay. That's okay. I still enjoyed it, just wasn't my favorite of the month. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you later.